Normally when you hear the words egg drop, you think soup. Not today. We're kicking off my new series with one of my most well-known dishes where egg drop is a sauce. Today, we're exploring why the egg drop technique works with my tomato egg drop. First of all, conceptually, the tomato and egg drop is about building a saucy tomato dish because the context is rice. It is not a stir fry, so we're not going to be picking up pieces of tomatoes to eat. So, for maximum tomato meltability, we're peeling the tomatoes. Now, I thought this was standard issue technique, and it turns out some people like to peel their tomatoes with a peeler. We're not going to be doing that today. We're going to be peeling them in an old sort of like a culinary school type of way. Not that I went to culinary school. We're drawing X's on the bottom of our tomatoes, and then we're going to dunk this into hot water. Couple of seconds, no more than 30 for sure. And then once that tomato gets dunked into ice water, the peel is going to come off super easily. Make sense? Cool. It is one of those little details that if you do take the lengths and you do put in the work to do it, it just makes that tomato sauce just a little bit more delicious. We've gone to the lengths to peel these things, so we're also going to just take out the core tomatoes. We're just cutting small wedges, and because we're going to be cooking the tomato for a little bit of time, they're basically going to melt, so it doesn't really matter how nice your knife technique and how big your tomatoes are going to be. Cool. Second ingredient, eggs. Most of what Americans associate with egg drop is egg drop soup. And what happens is cold eggs are dropped into a hot soup, so they form small, tiny little ribbons. Those ribbons are supposed to be an imitation of the texture of the soup. The soup is a little bit gelatinous, it's a little bit thick because it's made with animal broth. This egg drop is what in Chinese we would refer to as a blanket egg drop. So we're dropping eggs into a sauce and we're letting it set just barely and using the egg drop technique to thicken the sauce, one, but also to create curdles of eggs instead of the small wispy eggs that are inside of egg drop soup. So the things that we're adding to this egg is number 1 for seasoning and number 2 for silkiness. Eggs first. It's 3 eggs to a quarter teaspoon of salt. A quarter teaspoon looks something like a generous pinch. By the way, this is kosher salt. So it's nice and flaky. If you use table salt, this will come out way too salty. So eggs and the salt is for the seasoning. Also, if you'd like to know, adding the salt a little bit earlier helps the eggs set a little bit so that when you actually cook them, they don't get as runny as quickly. It's almost like a marinade, almost like a brine. A little bit of white pepper, which is slightly fermented for a spice edge. And then finally, here is the other secret, which is oil. We're using neutral oil, canola, today. Adding oil to this egg drop is going to make the whole product a little bit silkier. It's going to help it float a little bit, and it'll just give us an easier pour because it's going to be a little bit more liquidy than if it was just eggs. Yolks and whisk them. I'm inevitably Chinese, so this is how I whisk my eggs, with chopsticks. You want it to be pretty well emulsified and pretty smooth. Last component, aromatics. Different people have different philosophies. The main 3 in all of Chinese cooking, ginger, garlic, scallion. In a stir fry, I like adding ginger, because I like the flavor of ginger. I don't actually like garlic because I find it a little bit overwhelming for it. And also garlic plus tomato for me is very marinara-ish. That's honestly just a stylistic difference. However, in a tomato and egg drop, I like only scallion. Alliums, like scallion or onion, give you the basis of a sweetness and a little bit of that aromatic flavor. It also is going to caramelize quite nicely when we start our stir fry. Keep some of those greens for garnish, just to remind ourselves that we took the time to peel the tomatoes so the whole thing should look nice. So now we're gonna cook the tomato sauce. On the topic of tomato sauce, everybody's making tomato sauces right now, marinara, so on and so forth. Of tomato sauces, this is quite a simple one. It doesn't take a huge amount of time to cook. We've already peeled them, so as we're cooking, we're trying to activate the aromatics, we're trying to melt the tomatoes, get them nice and saucy, and then we're trying to integrate all of those flavors and season it just very, very barely. There is a little bit of ketchup in there, classically Chinese, specifically quite Hong Kong, because tomatoes taste like ketchup. Rather, ketchup tastes like tomatoes, so you add ketchup-y stuff. No, ketchup tastes like tomatoes, so you add tomato-y stuff to the tomatoes to make the tomato sauce more tomato-y. That's the theory. Make sense? So, wok or a skillet. Actually, you might be thinking to yourself, you should be using a cast iron skillet or a carbon steel wok. If your wok is not terribly well seasoned, cooking tomatoes like this that are so acidic, that's going to take your seasoning off. So I prefer to use something that's a little bit non-reactive, stainless steel, for example. If you have a stainless steel wok or a stainless steel pan, that's the way to go. In this case, this is a non-reactive wok. Heat the wok up before you add the oil. Heat the oil up until it's shimmering. By shimmering, I mean when you shake the pan, you should see little ripples. If it's all moving as one distinct mass, it's not hot enough. Okay, once that's there, scallions go in. It takes about 30 seconds for the white parts of the scallions to go translucent. You don't want to pick up too much brown color here. Not that type of sauce. Once you start to smell it, and it smells great, tomatoes go in. Once the tomatoes have gone in, all of this is going to slowly release liquid. That's the goal. As the tomato sauce continues to break down, now we're going to season it with salt, sugar, and MSG. Roughly, very roughly, the ratio we're looking at is something like 2 salt, 1 sugar, 1 MSG. Okay.
What is MSG and why are people afraid of it?
Super long story. So, MSG is a naturally occurring chemical that creates the sensation of savoriness or umami-ness, which is the 5th taste. MSG is like sodium chloride, aka salt. It's so important to all of the foods that we love. The common examples are tomatoes, Doritos, and meat products and seafood products. Make sense? So the last seasoning and the secret sauce here is a Hong Kong favorite, which is ketchup. I mean, it's been, how long has it been? It's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe? And already the sauce is breaking down significantly. So we're going to add our liquid, which in this case is chicken stock. Vegetable stock also works, water also works. This sauce has been brought to a boil. I'm only going to give it about a minute before that flavor gets consolidated and all those flavors start to talk to each other and it mingles. So for those of you who have made tomato and egg before, this is going to look way too watery, but that's okay because we're going to thicken it. So, really quick lesson, if you don't already know, on starch slurries. Starch slurries are the primary technique we use to thicken sauces because, unlike a roux, we can add starch slurries at the end of the cooking process so we have a little bit more control. Almost always on hand, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. This is a tablespoon of water to a tablespoon of cornstarch. So add a little bit on the surface, stir it, and let it come to a boil. Check it, a little bit thicker. The important thing is to let it heat up fully because otherwise you won't be able to track how well it's thickening your sauce. Let this tomato sauce come to a boil. We're going to taste it. We're checking for balance. Good. We're checking for balance between salt, sugar, and acidity from the tomato itself. That's quite good. This is nice. It barely coats the back of your spoon. It's a little bit thinner than a fully thickened sauce, so that's good. Oh shoot, I just remembered. Last thing to season this with right at the end is a little bit of sesame oil. I don't love adding sesame oil early in the cooking process because if you really cook sesame oil, it kind of kills that nutty flavor. This is just a little bit of earthiness and nuttiness to finish off the whole sauce. Tiny bit of sesame oil and towards the end. This is like perfect sauciness that's going to thicken up just a little bit when the egg drop goes in. Sauce is thickened, sesame oil is in there. This is tasted. It's sour and savory and umami and all those things. The last step is the egg. So I'm going to pour this egg mixture onto the sauce as close to the surface as possible to almost get it to float. And as it sinks, the egg blanket is going to cook. If we mix this now, the egg is going to emulsify into the sauce and it's going to look a little bit like vodka sauce, and that's not right. Turn it back on to a medium, to a very gentle simmer, and let that egg slowly cook. You see it? Slowly coming to life. The egg is slowly being set. Don't go too hot at all. This is why people like shakshuka, and it's the best parts of tomatoes and eggs. Savoriness and umami deliciousness is a product of multiplicative amino acids. Tomatoes have some, eggs have some. When we bring it together, extra flavor. Okay, it's been about a minute of simmering. We're just going to scrape the bottom just to release any egg that might have stuck to the bottom of the pan during the drop. You see how gentle and how soft this egg is? It's like a very fluffy French omelet level scrambled egg that has a little bit of nice fats and liquids in there. It's a perfect dish to go with rice. In the perfect context, we'd be eating this dish with a bunch of other dishes at home, family style. You might have a steamed chicken, you might have some steamed seafood, or a stir-fried veggie, or some like braised meat dish, and then you'd have this on the side as what in Chinese we call 下饭菜. So this is something that is designed for eating rice. It almost increases the amount of rice that you eat because of how good the accompaniment of texture and flavor this dish to the rice is. This is probably my go-to one person at home meal. It's pretty nutritious, but also even when you're cooking for yourself, it's always nice to remind yourself that you care about yourself and you're going to make it look pretty with nice scallions on a bias. For the written recipe, just check out the description in the box below. Leave me a comment if you tried to make it. We'd all love to know how it turns out. I can eat this. I can eat this, right? Okay.